Okay, so there were several reasons why we decided to do the intervention that we did, and almost all the studies that we researched on the picture exchange communication system focused on increase in communication. Now, there was a couple of studies that I came across that...
As Mary just said, the word PECS. PECS stands for Picture Exchange Communication System. We will be saying that word a lot. That's what it stands for. What is Picture Exchange Communication System? It is a way for nonverbal students or people to communicate through picture cards. It is an augmentative and alternative form of communication for nonverbal people who are nonverbal, and through our PECS system, we created cards based around our participant's life. So all of the pictures that he used had to do with himself and things of his interest. Our participant is a 4-year-old male. He is a preschool student, and his problem behaviors. We listed his problem behaviors as him covering his ears, him running away from a situation, his aggressive crying, and putting his hands around your neck. He wouldn't squeeze, he just put him there because he could be nervous. Our independent variable that is hopefully going to change these things is the PECS system, is the cards that he will eventually give to us for him to communicate. After all the research, we came up with our hypothesis. It is the picture exchange communication system will have significant impact on spontaneous communication and problem behaviors of a preschool child with autism who is nonverbal.
It was a single subject change in criterion design, which ultimately means our participant was a single male, and we changed our expectations for him throughout this process. There were several phases that we implemented, and each phase required him to do something more difficult. And this made it easier for us to implement PECS more naturally while being able to look at the decrease in problem behaviors and increase in communication. So there were different people that were involved in this intervention, and one of which is called the communicative partner, and that is the person that the participant is directly communicating with. So as I'm going to explain to you in a couple of minutes, they are the person who the participant hands the card to when he is requesting something. The next person that is involved is the physical prompter, and they are only involved in the beginning parts of each phase because they are ultimately phased out. And this was the person who guides the participant to the card when they are unfamiliar with what to do. They do not speak. There is no physical prompts by any of these people. The only communication that is said verbally is when the participant hands the communicative partner the card. The communicative partner then names the item that the participant is requesting. The third person is the data recorder, and this person is kind of in the background, and they are recording the amount of problem behaviors and the frequency of communication. And we use this by an iPhone app called Intervals, which the data recorder used that to record their behavior. So these were the different phases of the PECS system. The PECS system as a whole goes through 6 phases. We only went up to phase 3. It started with baseline, and this was a 15-minute play session. This baseline was just pretty much getting to know the participant, getting to know his likes, his dislikes, what he liked to do, how he reacted through certain situations. So that was 15 minutes. Phase 1, training. You're going to see that each phase we separated into training and play. Usually these are not separated in between training and play, but we felt that it would be easier to analyze the data by separating it this way. The big change that you're going to see in between our training and play phases is that the physical prompter is phased out during the play phase, because when this would be implemented in any other setting, the physical prompter is gradually phased out as the phase goes on. So phase 1 is learning how to communicate. So the training lasts for 15 minutes, and the participant is just pretty much introduced to the whole idea of handing the communicative partner a card. This card can have nothing on it. It's just introducing the idea that, oh hey, I get to get what I want by giving somebody a card. So we recorded the number of requests and problem behavior during this training phase. This training phase lasted 5 times, and the reason why it lasted 5 times, or why these numbers vary, is because we needed to wait for at least 2 study points in our data to know that he mastered that phase to move on to the next one. So phase 1 play is also another 15-minute play session, but in this phase, the physical prompter was no more, because we found that our participant was able to understand that if I took away his iPad, he needed to give me a blank card in my hand to get the iPad back. And I would say, iPad. And that's when he would be able to play with it again. Phase 2 goes into more detail, and it requires the participant to be farther away from the communicative partner. This is distance and persistence. This would mean that I would take away the item, and he would have to walk across the room to hand me the card to get the item back. So this is just reinforcing skills that he already learned in phase 1, but making it more challenging for him. This is still a blank single card, and there is absolutely no verbal prompts other than the communicative partner saying the item that the participant is requesting. Phase 2 play would be just, again, the phasing out of the physical prompter as he mastered that skill. Phase 3 is simple discrimination, and that is when we added a picture symbol to the card. So this would be the participant's way of making sure that he understands the correlation between a picture symbol and the figure or the object that he wants. So phase 3A is simple discrimination, which means that he will be presented with, the first time, with 2 cards. And one picture will be something that he would have wanted to play with automatically, such as, in this case, his iPad. And the other picture would have been something that he would have no interest for, say a scientific beaker. So he's more inclined to be like, oh, I want the iPad. I'm going to find the picture of the iPad. So this also incorporated steps from phase 1 and phase 2, needing him to walk across the room to go to the communicative partner in order to gain the item back. This is also the phase where you can generalize the skill. He's needed to generalize the skill. In our case, we generalized switching the physical prompters and the communicative partners because we were not able to generalize it out of the home setting. His school setting was not on board with this implementation, so we needed to do it within the home. Phase 3B is a continued discrimination, which means that he needed to be able to decipher the difference between a multiple of well-liked items. So he would, let's say, have the picture of the iPad, a picture of his hammer, a picture of the TV, and a beverage that he likes. So he would need to know, okay, well, which one do I really want right now? And he would be able to take it and bring it to the communicative partner. In this phase, the physical prompter is no more because in our case, he mastered this skill very well and very quickly. For the following pictures and video you were about to see, we gained parental, she said it was okay. She said it was fine that we use this.
If you can tell in the picture, this first picture is our participant. These are all of his cards that we actually made, laminated with Velcro on the back, so he can pull it off, go hand it to somebody, and then it can always go back up there whenever he wants to use these cards. So in the first picture, what he's doing is he's taking the picture of the orange juice, because he wants orange juice. He's walking over to Ilana, handing her the picture of the orange juice to tell her, I want this orange juice. Whereas before this system, he would pull somebody to the refrigerator and just stand there, because he can't communicate, and he necessarily wouldn't point to what he wanted because he didn't know how to do that. So now he can tell you he wants orange juice.
In this case, actually, we were still working with the iPad, and again, this is a phase 3B training, play phase. So he was introduced to a plethora of symbols that he was able to use. So he was also able to recognize, you know what, I don't want to play with the iPad right now, I want to drink. And he went over, grabbed it, gave it to me, and said, okay, I really want orange juice now. So I stopped what I was doing and I got him orange juice. And I went back.
The next is a video that we are going to show you. We're going to play it twice. The first time so you could see it, the second time so you understand it. The first time, if you can catch it, Ilana is taking his iPad away from him, and then he's going to go to the board, take off the card to get the iPad back. It's not playing.
It is.
No, it's not.
Oh no, everything went black. Why? I think our overhead.
I think it burned out.
Hey teachers, do we know how to fix that?
The graph that we have is the frequency of independent requests. And as you can see, it's an ascending trend, and PECS did in fact have a significant impact on the frequency of independent requests, which was really great, and what we expected because so many studies had focused on the communication. The change in level was most significant in phase 3B, and that was when the frequency of the independent request was the highest at 13. So that was really awesome to see, and that was when it stabled off at 13 as well. The lowest was in phase 1 training, and while the... Now I also separated that graph into the independent requests during training and then play to see how much of an impact each one. It was more of a difficult concept because that was the concept of discrimination, rather as phase 2 was distance. So discrimination seemed to be a little bit more challenging for him, but he began to grasp it as we continued on. Now, this is a graph of the frequency of intervals. We did partial interval reporting for the instances of problem behaviors in 30-second intervals. Now, the reason that you see baseline being 0 is because he didn't have to show any problem behaviors because this was free play. So nothing was being taken away from him. Now, as soon as we began the intervention, we saw just a huge spike. So our graph is kind of ascending immediately, and then it's descending. And the very first trial of our intervention was the highest of problem behavior intervals with problem behaviors at 15. So, but then it really began to take a steep decline, and you can see by phase 1 play, we had already gotten the behaviors down to 0. So that was really great. It was very quick. And once again, you can see around phase 3A training, there was one interval with problem behaviors, and once again, we think that this is a correlation between the difficulty. And this was mainly because he was getting to know the intervention in the beginning, so his problem behaviors were more elevated rather than generalization when he started to understand the concept. So just to review, PECS had a significant impact on both dependent variables, the independent requests, and the problem behaviors. Requests made increase